Hi everyone. If you're familiar with my work, you know I like making these cute blobby characters with simple shapes, and in this video I'm going to show you how I do that in the most beginner-friendly way I can. So going through the whole process, starting from a sketch and going into modeling, and then choosing materials and lighting and texturing and things like that, and then rendering and compositing. I think it's a good idea to start with the basic sketch. You can do your own, or you can just copy mine. And I'm just going to make a very, very simple character with a big round head, big round hands, and round feet. And this will be something that's very simple to make in Blender. Now we're going to open up Blender and just come to the top right and drag open a new window. And then we're going to select the image editor and just drag and drop the image of the drawing. We're not going to delete the default cube. We're going to use this as a basis for all of our shapes in the character, and we're going to use a modifier called subdivision surface, which is going to turn the cubes, it's going to add more geometry to the cubes and turn them into spheres and any other shapes. And I think this is a really great way to model because you keep very simple geometry, just cubes, but you can create all sorts of organic shapes with them. And this is especially good for characters where you don't typically have a lot of hard edges unless you make a robot or something. So let's come over to the right to the modifiers panel, and we'll add a modifier, subdivision surface modifier. And you can see it's made this into sort of a sphere, and we're going to set the levels in the viewport to 2, and then right click on it and shade smooth. And this is going to be the head of the character. I'll just press G to move, and then press Z and move the mouse, and that movement is now locked to the Z axis, so it's just moving upwards. Now I'm going to change the view to orthographic instead of perspective in the viewport, and I think that just makes it a bit easier to visualize where everything is. So to do that, go to View in the top left, and then click Perspective Orthographic, which will switch it. You can also press numpad 5. Now for the body, I'm going to duplicate the head. So I'm just going to press Shift D to duplicate. And now I can move it around. I'm going to press Z to lock it to the Z axis and move it down here. And it's a bit big, so I'm going to press S to scale and just move my mouse to make it a bit smaller. And I'm going to press G and Z and move it up to roughly the right position. Now for the hands and feet, I'm going to use a mirror modifier. So I'm going to duplicate the body with Shift D and just move it down so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'm going to add a new modifier, which is the mirror modifier. And then I'm going to press Tab and go into edit mode, and then G and X to move it on the X axis. And you can see now it's mirrored across the X axis. And then I'm going to go back to object mode, move the hands up. In edit mode, move them away a bit. Okay. Now for the feet, I'm going to duplicate the hands with Shift D, move them down, move them across in edit mode. Now the feet are not perfect spheres in the drawing. So to get that shape, I'm going to press Tab and go into edit mode. And I'm going to select face, select mode, and click on this face and press E to extrude. And then we get this kind of pill shape, which is a bit closer to what we want. I'll select this face, and then press G to move it, and X to lock it to the axis. And move this one over here. This is a bit closer to the foot shape that we want. Now the feet are moved off completely to the wrong side, so I'm going to press A to select all faces, and then move X, and shrink them a little bit, and maybe rotate them on the Y axis by pressing R and then Y to rotate. Okay, let's do the ears as well. I'm just going to copy the hands, Shift T, and then in edit mode scale them down, and I want them to be a bit flat, so I'll just scale them on the Y axis with S and Y, and then move them in. Scale them, just scaling it and rotating. There we go. Now for the arms and legs, we'll copy the hands again, and then in edit mode we'll extrude so we get this pill shape again. And then we scale down the pill shape and just move it along the x-axis up. Yeah, and that'll do. And for the legs, duplicate those, edit mode, rotate on the y-axis, and move, and then we have some legs. Okay, we're nearly done. Let's add the nose. We'll just duplicate the head because it's in the right place. Scale it down, move it on the y-axis and scale it down. And for the eyes, we'll duplicate the hands again. In edit mode, scale them down. Press G and X to move them closer together. Then in object mode, we'll just move them up here. Scale them down a bit in edit mode. Okay, now the trickiest part will be the smiley face. So to do that, we'll duplicate the nose. Just move it forward so we can see what we're doing. Then we'll go into edit mode, and I'm going to drag this up by pressing G and Z. And then over here on the left, we'll use a loop cut, and I'll set the number of cuts to 3, and just click here, and there we've got 3 loop cuts. Then I'm going to go back to object mode, go to object, set origin, origin to geometry. That will move this origin to the center of the object. Now on the modify tab, we're going to use a deform modifier called simple deform. And that has some different modes. It's got twist, bend, taper, and stretch. And we're going to use bend. And there you see, if I adjust that, it bends into a smiley or a sad face. It's a bit fat, so in edit mode I'm going to scale it. And if I scale and then press Shift Z, it means it scales on every axis except the Z axis, which is what we want to make it a bit thinner. And then to get it in the right rotation, I'll just rotate on the y-axis by 90 degrees, and then on the x-axis by 90 degrees. And you can do that by pressing R and then X to lock it to the axis, and then typing in the number 90. And then we'll just move it by I. Now that's a very creepy smile, so I'm going to reduce the angle and then scale it down in object mode so that it matches a bit closer to the drawing. Maybe scale the nose down, move the eyes a bit closer together. Now to do some more adjustments, I'm just going to parent the ears, the eyes, the nose and the mouth to the head. And the way we do that is select the ears and then hold shift and click on the eyes, the nose and the mouth, and then finally click on the head, which is the thing we want everything to be parented to, and then Control P, parent, object, keep transform. Now everything is parented to the head, so if we move the head, everything comes with it. I'm just going to move the head forward a bit, so this chin is sticking out. Now it doesn't look exactly like the drawing, so I think the legs maybe need to be a bit bigger. So I'll just click on those. And I think I want the feet a bit closer together, so I'll click on them, go into edit mode and move them a bit closer. Okay, now we've done the modeling. We still want to turn this into an image. So to do that we have to render it, and we have to set up some lighting and materials and colors and the camera and things like that. So what I'm going to do is just drag this window across here, and in the top right open a new window, set this to 3D viewport again, and then if you press 0 on the numpad or go to view active camera, this window is going to be our sort of camera viewport while we use this one to look at the whole scene. Now I want the camera to be directly from the front, so the way I'm going to do that is either press 1 on the numpad or go to view viewport front here, and then align active camera to view, and the shortcut for that is Control Alt numpad 0. Now the camera is pointing towards the front, and I want the camera to be orthographic here because there's no perspective going on this image. So I'll set the camera type to orthographic, and I want this image to be maybe this shape, which is about 4:3 ratio. So I know that at the moment it's 16:9, which is 1920 by 1080. So if I set this resolution to 1440, the frame is now 4:3. And I'm going to press G, and in the camera view just drag across so that the character is in the center. And if I go to the camera settings, I can set the scale, which is basically the zoom for orthographic. And I'm going to slightly tilt the camera down by pressing R and then X. So we're looking down on the character just a little bit. Let's add a floor. So I'll press Control A, add a plane, and then S to scale it up, and I'm going to move it down below. Press G and Z to move it down below the character's feet. Scale it up some more. Now the render engine I want to use for this is Cycles. So I'll go to the render properties, render engine, and select Cycles. And I'm going to select GPU compute because that's faster. If you have the right kind of GPU, you might not have this option. And to make it faster, I'm going to set the max samples to 10, turn on denoising, and I'm going to do the same for the render. Now if I want to see how this looks rendered, I'll scroll across the top here and turn on viewport shading. There we go. Now we can see how the render is going to look, and it's not that nice look. I'm going to turn off overlays here. It looks very 3D. The shadows are very sharp. It's not really. It's not what I want. I'm going to select the light and go to the light properties, and I'm going to make the radius of the light a lot bigger. And I want another light, so I'll just duplicate it, Shift D, and maybe a third one. So I've got 3 lights here, 1, 2, 3. And I like how this looks. It looks a bit like a real object, maybe a little plastic toy. To make it look more real, I want to use depth of field as well. So I'm going to click on the camera and tick the box that says depth of field. And the main setting for depth of field that you want to worry about is f-stop, which is basically the lower the number, the more out of focus the image is. So if I go all the way down, we get this really out of focus image, which I think looks kind of cool. At the moment we can't see the face, which is a problem. So what I'll do is press Ctrl A and add an empty object, which is just something that is useful in the scene, but it won't be rendered. So I'll just add empty plane axes and press G and move them to just in front of the face here. And this is going to be the target for the focus. So if I click Focus Object and search for empty, there you can see that it's now using this empty object to define where the plane of focus is. Now it's still too out of focus, even for me. So I'm going to change the f-stop to maybe 0.4. One thing I really like about using orthographic cameras is it makes the depth of field even stronger. So now let's start adding some colors. I want the eyes and the mouth to be black, like they're just drawn on here maybe. So I'm going to remove the material that's already here, add a new material. I'll make the color black, surface base color black, and then click on the mouth. And if I click on browse material, I can select this new black material that I've made for the mouth as well, so they're showing the same material. I haven't decided what color I want everything. I think I want the nose to be a new color, so I can also press this button to add a new material. I'm going to make it red, kind of reddy pink. And I think I want the ears to be the same color, so I'll go to browse material, and now the ears are the same color. Now I could change the color of the body, maybe blue. Blue, yeah. Okay, you can just play around and experiment. And if I duplicate the light, I can maybe make a different atmosphere. I can have a backlight, sort of a rim light. If I set this to a spotlight, shrink the radius down, I can get a nice spotlight effect. Maybe I want the feet to be red again. The hands to be white. If I want the material to be a bit more shiny, I'll just change the roughness. So it looks a bit like he's made of plastic now. Now I'll change the color of the floor. Just create a new material for the floor and select the color. Let's make this kind of purpley blue. And I still haven't decided what color I want the body. And maybe I want a bit more depth of field now. I think that's nice. And now I can also start moving things around maybe. If I want the pose to be a bit more dynamic, like I got this hand slightly higher. It was an accidental thing when drawing, but these things can look nice in 3D if you bring some mistakes and some of the immediacy of sketches into 3D. Can look nice. I think maybe I want the floor to be a lighter color. There we go, I'm happy with that. Now we could add some decoration to the scene, maybe some blobs on the floor. So I'll add a new cube and then add a modifier, subdivision surface, shade smooth, shrink it down. Then we have some white blobs. And we can add a blob in the background. Add a bit of visual interest. Decoration to the image. And they look really nice with the depth of field. You get this really soft fuzzy edge, which I like. And all I'm doing is just duplicating and moving around these blobs. Kind of looks like he's on the moon maybe, or yeah. Now we can change the world background color. At the moment we just left it at the default, at this grey. If I make it darker or lighter, you can see it changes the light in the scene. I don't want to change it I don't want it to be too bright because it will ruin all the lighting that I've set up. So I'm just going to make it this nice kind of dark purple color. Okay, now I'm happy with that image. I've made sure that the render settings are the same as the viewport, so it's going to look the same. Another thing you can do is maybe mess with the compositing. So if I come up to the top in the compositing tab, click on use nodes, and then I'm going to do Shift A and add a glare node, which I think looks really nice. Then if I come back to the layout tab and over here turn on always for the compositor, you can see the effect of the compositor in this rendered view. I can actually open the 3D viewport in the compositor window here. Press numpad 0 to go to the camera. Rendered view always. Now you see if I adjust the threshold on the glare, it makes it more or less strong. Maybe I want to adjust the colors a bit with curves, so I'll add RGB curves. if I move these around, you can change the contrast of the image, make the blacks a bit lighter and the whites a bit darker. You can really play around and get some crazy visuals from doing stuff like this. Now this is stuff I usually like to do in Photoshop, but you don't need Photoshop. You can do this in Blender now. Now I also want a bit of noise overlay. I think this is also something I do in Photoshop typically, but I'm just going to show you how you can do it in Blender. So I'll do Shift A to add a texture, and then add a mix color node, and then just move the mix color node here and attach the output of the texture here, set it to soft light. Then we're going to go into textures, create a new texture, distorted noise, and then I'm going to set the size to 0, and then select the texture that we just made. And if I turn the factor down, you can control how strong, how much noise you want. And you can change the blend mode here. And you can experiment with different textures, different amounts of noise. I'm just going to do a slight, very subtle noise because I think it looks nice. But that's up to your personal taste. So I'll render the image. And there we go. I hope you found that useful, and maybe you learned something, and I hope it gave you some confidence to be able to just use very simple techniques, simple shapes, and to make something that looks cute and cool and nice. Thanks for watching.